I want recovery 100%. Well, why aren't I behaving 100%? What's the matter with me? And I was told to ask myself those questions every day. And I do, most days. And I suggest you do the same. And Mary would have to do the same, you see. Am I going to hang on to this, or am I going to take the risk that there is a loving God? And so that's the way Mary will find recovery. And then finally we come to Jane. Jane has no belief in a personal God. Jane is an atheist, or she has such serious doubts that she's agnostic. Now, it may be that Jane has never been brought up with any notion of God. It may not have been part of her upbringing. Her parents, for all practical purposes, may have been atheist. Or maybe she never given any thought to it. It was never an important thing in her life. Or it may be that she has thought about it. It may be, as some people say, that my whole interest and my whole education has been science, physics and chemistry or biology and technology, and science and technology, and I have no belief in God. If Jane is saying that, she should realize that's a very, very old-fashioned attitude. No self-respecting scientist would say that today. It's past its sell-by date, that has. You see, in the 19th century and into the 20th century, yes, because there were so many scientific discoveries in physics, chemistry, biology, and so on, Darwin onwards and so on, and because there were so many technological breakthroughs that some scientists, many, even quite a number, a majority maybe, felt that they had all the answers to everything in life. And they became very arrogant in this matter. They had the answers to everything. And then a devastating thing happened. From 1914 to 1918, the four most scientifically advanced and well-educated peoples of the whole world, the Germans, the British, the French, and the Americans, spent 4 years using science and technology to slaughter millions of their young men in the trenches. And that was a terrible blow to scientific arrogance. And it went on, because the Nazis used science and technology to murder millions of people, Jews and others. They did it with science and technology. And then through science and technology, we devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki with the atom bombs. And we've made nuclear weapons. So science hasn't got the answer to how to live. It certainly has the answer to how to die and how to kill, but not how to live. And to my mind, science came of age, and it came away from this adolescent know-all at the moon landing. I was in America at the time of the moon landing. I was actually in Washington. It was a nice occasion to be there. And we all know that Neil Armstrong, when he stepped out on that spaceship onto the moon, he made that statement, a small step for a man, a giant step for mankind. What many people don't remember is what those two astronauts said when they were afterwards, when they were orbiting the moon, and they could see the photograph that we've become familiar with, but this was the first time it was seen, of the planet Earth, with the blueness of it and the greenness of it and the white clouds. They could see it. We've become familiar with that. But this was the first time any human being had ever seen this. And they were asked, how do you feel? And they both said it together, the opening words of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And these were two scientists and two technically, logically expert people. And they recognized that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So it's very old-fashioned to be atheist because you're a scientist, and Jane would have to recognize that. But she should recognize something else as well. For Jane or anybody else to say, I do not believe in God, is not a moral fault. It's a statement of fact, of how she is. She's nothing to blame herself for that. And for Jane or anybody else to say, I can't believe in God, that's not a moral fault, that's the statement of where she is. But I would beg Jane, or anybody else like her, never to say, I will not believe in God, because now she's closing off the future. She's closing her mind. She's saying, I'm not going to learn any more. And a closed mind, whatever else it is, can't be a scientific mind. A scientific mind has to be an open mind. So there are more things in heaven and earth than our philosophies and science have dreamt of. So where is Jane going to get sobriety? She's not going to get it from herself. She already knows she's powerless. She's not going to get it from her unbelief, but she's going to get it through Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And there, she's going to have to accept the idea of God. But she may not be ready for that yet. So what AA and NA says to her, accept any power greater than yourself. What by shorthand we call a higher power. I'm not too happy with that expression myself because it implies somebody up there, somebody vaguely up there, a higher power. You know, I don't want a power up there. I want it down here with me. You see? And so I prefer to say a greater power, greater than me, and greater than. But if Jane can find a higher power, a greater power, then she will, like anybody else, she will find recovery. And it will take a certain humility on her part. You see, and the trouble with Jane, it's not an intellectual thing, is it? Jane may have experienced suffering and tragedy in her own life, or she may be aware, as we all are, of the suffering in the world. And she may say, as so many do, how can God allow a thing like that? How can God allow this to happen to me? How can God allow babies to die of AIDS? How can God allow children to have leukemia? How can God allow spina bifida babies? And so on and so forth. Why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow evil? And it's a very easy step to say there can't be a God. So she's face to face, as we all are, with the problem and the mystery of suffering and evil. And none of us have an answer to it. What she can do is what I have to do, and others have to do. Here I know that there's suffering and evil in my own life and in the world. And here I know, I believe that God loves me. And I don't see how the two are connected. But I'm not going to let go of this one. I do believe God loves me, even though I suffer and I experience evil. And I don't know how they're connected. Now Jane's going to have to take that risk. And she will need to have the humility to say that I don't understand things and I don't understand God, but I'm willing to go along with it. I'm willing to have a power greater than myself, no matter where it leads me. And as you know, there is a book, which you have copies of here, called Came to Believe, of the stories, the personal stories of some 200 men and women who came into Alcoholics Anonymous with no personal belief in God. But they chose some realistic higher power, and they went along with it, and gradually they came to be comfortable with the word God. But it was the God of their own idea, the God of their own understanding, and it was a loving God. See? So we claim spiritual progress. So these are these 5 people. I'll just sum up now. These are these 5 people. There's Tom with a religion which seems to have let him down, and he has to find recovery elsewhere. He has to learn that lesson. There's Dick with a religious belief in a loving God, who also, but should he come back to the practice of his religion? And then there's Harry, who has his own personal belief in God. Should he look for a fellowship to help him with that, as he does with his sobriety? There's poor Mary, who has this terror of God. Is she going to change that idea, get rid of it? And then there's Jane, who has no belief in God, but she's ready to accept a power greater than herself, a higher power, and see where that leads us. That's the 5 possibilities that come to me, and I would suggest that you see which one, if any of them, which one applies to you.